Mary Jo Kopechne could have survived for hours inside that sinking car. Divers said she was positioned near an air pocket, hands braced, head tilted up, fighting to breathe. Ted Kennedy said he tried to save her. Then he swam away. Then he waited until morning to call anyone. When he finally sat with her mother, Gwen, in private, she expected an apology. She expected answers. What she got instead haunted her until the day she died. In 1989, she finally revealed what Kennedy told her in those meetings, and it wasn't what anyone imagined. Mary Jo Kopechne entered the world on July 26, 1940, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, as the only child of Joseph and Gwen. Her father sold insurance and her mother stayed home, but the family's story went back much further. Both sides had lived in Luzerne County for more than 250 years, surviving the kind of rough coal town life where mines collapsed often and men rarely grew old. Her grandfathers worked in the Wyoming Valley mines, where accidents were so common that families waited for every whistle, wondering if their husbands or sons would walk back through the door. By the time Mary Jo arrived, the mines were worn out and the town had just gone through a terrible flood. Her parents wanted something better, something safer, something that would let their daughter grow without hearing the constant rumble of coal cars. So they moved to Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, when she was still an infant, and that one choice shifted her life from generations of hard labor toward a path filled with books, ambition, and possibility. Growing up, she lived in a strict Catholic home where schoolwork and faith were taken seriously. She went through parochial schools and graduated from Our Lady of the Valley High School in 1958. Her teachers were Dominican sisters who pushed discipline, kindness, and service, and those lessons shaped her more than she knew at the time. These were the early years of the civil rights movement, and even from a distance, she absorbed the idea that people deserved fairness. Her classmates remembered her as bright and warm, someone who took school seriously but never lost her softness. Those quiet impressions followed her into adulthood, where she would eventually build a reputation as a political worker who combined skill with a gentle, steady heart. When she graduated from Caldwell College for Women in 1962 with a business administration degree, she stepped straight into the world determined to help others. A professional degree like that was rare for women back then, but she treated it like a tool instead of a trophy. She headed to Montgomery, Alabama, at a time when the fight for civil rights was boiling in the streets. She taught typing and shorthand to black students at Montgomery Catholic High School and also worked on the school newspaper. Her time there was short, but it left a deep mark. She saw segregation up close and tried to make a difference through education, believing that strong skills could give people a chance to break free from limits forced on them. Not long after that, she moved to Washington, D.C., to work first for Senator George Smathers and later for Senator Robert F. Kennedy. By her mid-20s, she was rising fast, building a career that blended her compassion with her talent. Her inspiration came straight from John F. Kennedy's 1961 inaugural address, where he called on Americans to give rather than take. Those words settled into her mind and pushed her to make bold decisions. When she left for Montgomery after college, she walked right into an environment where violence, racism, and tension sat everywhere. She joined the Mission of St. Jude, a Catholic institution that cared for black and white residents when most places were strictly divided. The mission ran medical programs, education efforts, and food services, and it stood in the center of the civil rights movement. Marches passed through the city. Harassment was common, yet she stayed, working long days to help families who had nowhere else to turn. That choice said everything about her. She believed service mattered, even when the world around her felt dangerous. At the Mission of St. Jude, she spent her days teaching, organizing volunteers, and stepping into any role that needed filling. In 1965, when the Selma to Montgomery March brought national attention to the city, the mission hosted the Stars for Freedom rally, where Joan Baez and Mahalia Jackson performed. Mary Jo moved through all of it, helping wherever she could, while living with the constant knowledge that violence might erupt. Still, she refused to leave. She was young, but she carried herself with conviction, trusting that small acts could help hold a community together. During this time, she taught business classes at Montgomery Catholic High School. She guided students through typing drills, helped them learn shorthand, and encouraged them to write boldly for the school paper. Many remembered her later as confident and fun, someone who made her classroom feel alive. She connected easily with teenagers, asked what they thought, and pushed them to think wider. Even though she stayed for only 1 year, the memories stuck, and former students spoke about her well into adulthood, describing her as someone who made them feel seen and capable. Her impact at the school became part of her legacy in Alabama. Students talked about how she carried herself with quiet confidence, how she encouraged them not only to learn, but to stand for something. Her humility made her approachable, and her strength made her admirable. Her influence stayed long after she moved on, and even years later, teachers and alumni recalled the young woman who treated every student as someone with potential. At one point, she received an offer that would have changed her life in a different way. The Kennedy family wanted her to become a governess for the children. Many would have accepted immediately, but she turned it down. She wanted a career built on her own achievements, not a role tied to a powerful family's private life. She chose politics instead, showing the same independence she had carried since her school days. In 1963, she arrived in Washington, D.C., ready to build a political career. She worked first for Senator Smathers, then moved to Robert F. Kennedy's staff in 1964 after he entered the Senate. Her energy, loyalty, and skill helped her stand out. When RFK launched his 1968 presidential campaign, she became one of 6 young women placed in the boiler room, a cramped, windowless room where the core strategic work took place. She spent her days and nights handling sensitive information, tracking delegates, and writing materials that shaped the campaign. Her work in 1968 placed her in the center of RFK's run. She helped draft the speech he delivered on March 16, 1968, when he officially announced his candidacy. She dealt with speechwriters, field managers, and party officials every day. Her main responsibility was Pennsylvania, a crucial state in the race. She tracked changing loyalties, predicted delegate movements, and advised the campaign on strategy. Long nights were normal. Sometimes she worked straight through until morning, typing major speeches, while aides revised points around her. Her colleagues often described her as the sharpest political mind in the room. The Boiler Room Girls were an elite team made up of Mary Jo, Rosemary Keogh, Esther Newberg, Nance Lyons, Mary Ellen Lyons, and Susan Tannenbaum. They worked under tremendous pressure, sorting through delegate numbers, analyzing data from battleground states, and getting critical updates into the right hands. The room was noisy and hot, but they thrived in it. They were trusted enough to travel with RFK and discuss strategy face to face. Mary Jo, the oldest at 27, served as the anchor of the group, the one everyone else relied on. Her control over Pennsylvania's delegate intelligence made her one of RFK's most important behind-the-scenes strategists. She talked to field managers daily, collected reports, and pieced together political puzzles that shaped where the campaign placed its resources. Her instincts were strong enough that her predictions often proved accurate. She knew the state's political landscape better than most seasoned operatives. The hours were long and the pressure intense, but the Boiler Room Girls never wavered. Every day brought new updates, new shifts, new numbers to track. Mary Jo and her colleagues handled it all with loyalty and grit. Their work was essential, and RFK trusted them with details that few outside the room ever saw. Their dedication helped keep the campaign running during one of the most unpredictable political years in American history. Mary Jo's admiration for Robert Kennedy grew into a powerful force in her life. She believed deeply in his message and saw him as a leader who could change the country. In 1967, she worked at his home in Hickory Hill through the night, typing a major speech on the Vietnam War while advisors debated each line. She was known as the aide who stayed awake until sunrise to get everything right. She attended family gatherings, helped with tasks beyond politics, and viewed Kennedy as someone worth giving everything for. Her devotion became part of her identity. Then came June 5, 1968. RFK was assassinated at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, and Mary Jo was there that night. The loss crushed her. She rode on the funeral train carrying his body from New York to Arlington and helped pack up his office afterward. She told friends she could feel Kennedy everywhere in that building, which made it impossible to return to her old routine. The grief settled into her life like a weight she could not shake. She tried to ease back into politics by briefly working for George McGovern's Kennedy proxy campaign. But the memories were too strong. Eventually, she stepped away, taking time to travel and recover. Her father later said politics had been her life, and losing RFK broke something inside her that never fully healed. Later in 1968, she joined Matt Reese Associates, a pioneering political consulting firm. They assigned her to Colorado to recruit volunteers for Governor Stephen McNichols's Senate campaign against Peter Dominick. It was a tough race, and despite her hard work, McNichols lost in November. Even so, colleagues praised her dedication and resolve, noting how well she handled a difficult campaign. By mid-1969, she had moved on to Thomas J. Whelan's mayoral campaign in Jersey City. This time, the outcome was different. Whelan won, and Mary Jo's work was described as exceptional. She seemed ready for a bright future in political consulting, carrying the kind of talent and heart that made her stand out in every room. She was just getting started when her story came to its sudden end in July 1969, a moment that froze her promising life in time. On the night of July 18, 1969, Mary Jo Kopechne stepped into a moment that would change everything for her and for one of America's most powerful families. She was 28 and had spent the evening at a reunion for the Boiler Room Girls, the small group of campaign workers who had fought through Robert Kennedy's 1968 run with fierce loyalty. The cottage on Chappaquiddick Island felt warm and familiar, and people drifted in and out of conversations while music played softly in the background. Around 11, she left with Ted Kennedy without taking her purse, her hotel key, or even telling her roommate. That quiet choice became the first strange thread in a night that was already shifting toward something darker. As they drove away, the island air felt calm, but inside that Oldsmobile, the path ahead was already headed toward tragedy. Not long after they left the cottage, Kennedy drove straight off the dike bridge into Poocha Pond. The bridge was only about 20 feet long, narrow, unlit, and without guardrails. The plunge into the water was fast and violent. Kennedy escaped the sinking car and surfaced gasping, but Mary Jo remained trapped inside. The cold water swallowed the vehicle quickly, leaving only darkness below. Kennedy later claimed the crash happened around 11:15 p.m., but that version would begin to crack when witnesses and evidence pointed in a different direction. The silence that followed the crash stretched into hours that would leave deep scars on families, investigators, and the public. The timeline soon twisted even further. An off-duty deputy sheriff reported seeing a car matching Kennedy's plate At 12:40 a.m., almost 90 minutes after Kennedy claimed the accident had already happened. That strange detail never found a clear answer. It hung in the air like a shadow, raising questions that refused to fade. Each minute in that gap mattered, especially because Mary Jo was still inside the car, alone in the dark. Kennedy said he was in shock, confused, and not thinking clearly. Yet the roads he walked, the houses he passed, and the choices he made all pulled him farther away from the one person who needed him most. Hours later, at 8:45 a.m. on July 19th, diver John Farrar found Mary Jo's body in a position that froze investigators in their tracks. Her hands were braced against the back seat, her head tilted upward, and her body held in the exact place an air pocket would have formed. That detail hinted at something heartbreaking. She might have survived for some time, fighting to breathe as the water rose. There was no sign of struggle against another person, but there was clear evidence of a struggle for life itself. The discovery stayed with Farrar forever, and the image of her final moments became one of the most painful parts of the case. Kennedy later said he dove again and again trying to reach her. He said he shouted her name, swam down 7 or 8 times, and fought until he was exhausted. The water was dark and cold. Each attempt ended with him coming up gasping. After nearly 20 minutes of attempts, he walked back toward the cottage. He passed houses with lights on, passed chances to call for help, and did not take any of them. He said he was lost in fear and panic. Those emotions might have been real, but the consequences of his choices were even more real. Every minute mattered, and the minutes kept slipping away. At the cottage, Kennedy told only his cousin Joe Gargan and friend Paul Markham. They rushed back to the bridge and tried their own rescue attempts, diving repeatedly into the deep water. But they failed. Still, no one called the police. When Kennedy spoke about that night, he listed the emotions that overwhelmed him: grief, confusion, exhaustion, shock. Those feelings cannot erase what happened. They only show how tangled he became inside his own mind, while Mary Jo remained trapped in the dark. Then came a moment that stunned even the men closest to him. Kennedy suggested they create a story that shifted responsibility away from him. One version had Mary Jo driving alone. Another suggested Gargan could be named as the driver. Gargan refused immediately. He later described Kennedy as frantic, crying, and desperate to escape what he feared would destroy him. That conversation became one of the most controversial pieces of the entire case. It revealed a man cornered by his own fear and willing to bend the truth to escape it. After that argument, Kennedy suddenly jumped into the channel and swam about 500 feet back to Edgartown. The water was cold and black, and he nearly drowned on the way. When he reached the other side, he walked to his hotel, changed clothes, and acted calm when he ran into guests in the hallway. People remembered seeing him smiling, as if nothing had happened. The contrast between his calm surface and the chaos inside him only deepened the public's disbelief. The next morning, he talked casually with more hotel guests. Meanwhile, Mary Jo's car sat underwater with her still inside. Kennedy made several calls to political allies that morning, asking for guidance. He did not call the police. When the accident was finally reported at 9:50 a.m., the car had already been discovered by a teenager. By then, Mary Jo's body was no longer a mystery. Her loss had become a tragedy that could not be hidden. When divers lifted the car, something eerie emerged. Parts of the roof and trunk were dry. Even after hours underwater, those surfaces were untouched by the pond. It meant a clear air pocket had formed, a space where someone trapped could breathe for a while. Farrar explained that when he found Mary Jo, Her posture matched someone seeking that last bit of air. She had been alive long enough to brace herself, hold herself up, and try to keep breathing. Her final moments, spent in that shrinking bubble of air, painted a picture far more tragic than anyone wanted to imagine. Farrar later said she could have lived for at least 30 minutes, possibly even 3 or 4 hours, depending on how slowly the water filled the car. That belief shattered the idea that she died instantly. It also added crushing weight to the fact that no help came during those long hours. Farrar said he could have pulled her out within 25 minutes if someone had called him. That statement echoed through every investigation afterward. The cause of death became another point of conflict. Some forensic reports said drowning. Others, including Farrar's interpretation, said suffocation. If she died from lack of air inside the pocket, it meant she lasted until the air thinned to nothing. If she drowned, it meant water filled her lungs as she fought to stay above it. Both possibilities were painful. Both left families and investigators wondering why no one acted sooner. Judge Boyle later concluded that Mary Jo probably died sometime between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. That window meant she could have been alive for more than an hour after the crash, hoping for help that never came. Boyle did not settle the debate between drowning and suffocation. He left that question open. The uncertainty made the tragedy feel even sharper because it allowed room for the possibility that she was conscious, scared, and waiting. Mary Jo Kopechne's funeral came quickly, almost before her community had time to understand what had happened. It was held on July 22, 1969, inside St. Vincent de Paul Roman Catholic Church in Plymouth, Pennsylvania. And by the time the service began, the crowd outside had already grown into a restless sea of people. They were drawn there by shock, grief, and the hope of catching a glimpse of Senator Ted Kennedy, who walked in with his wife Joan beside him. The church doors stayed open for a moment longer than usual, enough for people to push forward, enough for reporters to aim their cameras, and enough for the sadness of the moment to mix with curiosity and tension. Mary Jo was only 28, a young woman who had worked on Robert F. Kennedy's campaign and dreamed of a future in public service. Her family buried her on the side of Larksville Mountain in a fifth-generation plot, a place meant for quiet rest. But the story surrounding her death refused to stay quiet. It spread fast, turning her funeral into something much heavier than a farewell, something tied forever to a scandal the nation could not stop talking about. When Kennedy arrived at the funeral, something else caught everyone's eye. He stepped out wearing a thick neck brace, stiff and dramatic, and it drew attention as quickly as the cameras could turn. People whispered about it immediately. Reporters circled. Critics claimed he was trying to look injured, trying to look shaken, trying to win sympathy when he had not earned any. There was no medical record that proved he needed the brace, and some people said he didn't wear it before or after that moment. The image of him walking with the brace, shoulders drooping, face pale, appeared on televisions across the country. Instead of calming suspicions, it only made them grow. People wondered if the brace was a prop, and the doubt settled in like a shadow that followed him for the rest of his life. The legal outcome did not ease the tension either. On July 25, 1969, Kennedy stood in court and pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident. The judge gave him a 2-month jail sentence, then suspended it. Not a single day behind bars. The public reaction was immediate and fierce. Many believed that anyone without the Kennedy name would have faced a punishment far heavier. The anger spread through newspapers, living rooms, and political circles, and people kept asking the same question. How could a young woman lose her life, and the man responsible walk away untouched? That sentence became a stain on Kennedy's legacy. one he could never wash off, no matter how many speeches he made or offices he held. That same day, Kennedy went on television and delivered a long statement about the Chappaquiddick incident. He looked straight into the camera and said words that sounded rehearsed and heavy. He admitted he failed to report the accident right away. He said he had been confused and in shock. He talked about grief, fear, doubt, exhaustion, panic, and the strange fog that followed him after the crash. He claimed he swam 500 feet across a channel in the dark, trying to find help, and nearly drowned on the way. People watched carefully, trying to see if he was truly remorseful or simply trying to save his career. When he finished, the country felt no relief. His words were too neat and too inconsistent, and the speech only strengthened the belief that something important was missing from his story. Within a year of Mary Jo's death, her parents, Joseph and Gwen Kopechne, met with Kennedy twice. These meetings happened privately at his request, and the family walked into them hoping for answers. Instead, they left feeling lost. Gwen later said the meetings were ridiculous because nothing new was ever said, nothing explained, nothing healed. Kennedy never told them what happened during the hours after the accident. He never explained why their daughter remained in the submerged car while he walked away and waited to report it. Each time the Kopechnes sat with him, they hoped he would finally speak openly. But every meeting carried the same emptiness. They felt their grief was being managed, not comforted, and the silence that followed them home grew heavier each time. The most painful part was that they learned nothing. Gwen said later that they did not get even one answer about the night of July 18, 1969. They did not find out how long Mary Jo survived inside the car. They did not hear a word about what Kennedy did in those missing hours. They did not receive any explanation about why their daughter was left alone underwater while the senator went back to his hotel. The silence was almost cruel. It stretched through the months, then through the years, until it became clear that they would never be told the truth. Even more painful was the fact that Kennedy never apologized. In a 1994 interview, the Kopechnes revealed that he never once looked them in the eye and said he was sorry. Letters came from other members of the Kennedy family, but the senator himself remained quiet. Gwen waited for years, hoping he might offer even one simple acknowledgement of responsibility, but nothing came. That silence hardened into something permanent, something that shaped how the Kopechnes remembered him. He continued his public life, but he never spoke the words they needed, and the space where an apology should have been stayed empty forever. In 1989, Gwen spoke publicly about it. Her voice trembled as she said she wanted him to tell her what happened. She pleaded for any detail that might lift the weight pressing on her heart. She said she carried the burden of not knowing, and she believed Kennedy could ease it if he chose to. But he never did. Her plea hung in the air, unanswered. She waited for a long time. Nothing changed. The silence she received was the same silence she had carried since the day her daughter died. The family did receive a settlement, but it came from the insurance company, not from Kennedy himself. The amount was $140,923, determined by actuaries calculating Mary Jo's potential lifetime earnings. It was a number printed on paper, a cold sum that tried to define the worth of a young woman's entire life. Their lawyer, Joseph F. Flanagan, confirmed that Kennedy did not pay any of it personally. The money did nothing for their hearts, and the transaction felt mechanical and detached. It only reminded them how easily a life could be reduced to a number. Years later, Gwen's anger sharpened. She spoke about the other women who were at the party that night, saying they all stayed silent. She believed there was a cover-up and that people had been paid to stay quiet. She thought the investigation was influenced by the Kennedys and that the hearings and inquest were carried out with a predetermined goal. She said the women present should have explained something, anything, but instead they stayed silent. That silence fed her belief that the truth had been buried along with her daughter. Jo Kopechne shared something even more heartbreaking. He said that the only satisfaction he and Gwen ever received was knowing that Mary Jo's death stopped Kennedy from becoming president. Kennedy's political rise collapsed after Chappaquiddick. He never managed to escape the shadow of the incident. Public trust never fully returned, and surveys in the 1970s and 1980s showed that voters could not forget. Joseph said Kennedy cared more about himself than about Mary Jo, and that every meeting they had with him felt hollow. The silence of the party attendees added to the mystery. Almost every person at the gathering avoided speaking about the night for decades. The women who were there were described as quiet and withdrawn, while the men insisted they had nothing more to say. Journalists tried asking questions over the years, but interviews were refused and stories stayed vague. Their unwillingness to speak pushed people to believe they were pressured or paid, or simply too frightened to reopen the wound. The truth stayed locked away, and no one who was there ever broke that silence. Then new information surfaced. In 2025, secret tapes recorded by journalist Leo D'Amour in 1988 came to light. They were found in a briefcase hidden under a bed belonging to one of his attorneys. These tapes included interviews with Joe Gargan, Kennedy's cousin. On them, Gargan admitted that Kennedy asked him to lie about who was driving the car. D'Amour had long believed he was being watched and threatened during his investigation, and the tapes confirmed some of the darkest suspicions. They suggested a coordinated effort to hide the truth, guided by political power and influence. The Kopechnes never saw these tapes. They died years before they surfaced. Joseph passed away in 2003, and Gwen followed in 2007. They left this world without the answers they deserved. Mary Jo's once bright career became overshadowed by a single tragic moment. She became known not for her work or her dreams, but for the way she died. Her family lived with a wound that never closed, and the silence that surrounded her death lingered long after everyone involved was gone, leaving behind a painful reminder of how truth can be lost when power stands in the way.